Good evening, San Diego. I'm Chief Meteorologist Carlene Chavis, and thank you for tuning in for your CBS 8 Plus weather update. We have made it to Friday Eve or Thursday, and we're talking about temperatures that were very similar to yesterday. Just a couple of degrees warmer when it came to daytime highs, but still talking about being below seasonal. We had widespread 70s across the inland valleys for today, and actually just across the county as a whole. That was the common range when it came to our temperatures. 77 degrees for Valley Center, the same for Escondido, 72 degrees for Miramar, 71 for downtown. You still had some of those 60s right there along the North County coastline. You had 69 degrees for Carlsbad today. Encinitas was at the same mark. And then talking about those 60s for the mountains and 88 degrees for Borrego Springs. We are in store for a temperature roller coaster. So temperatures will be going up by next week. But before that happens, we have to talk about the weak ridge of high pressure is trying to build in. And that's over us right now, right behind that recent low. So it's going to thin out our marine layer. It's going to extend about 5 to 10 miles inland when it comes to cloud cover and also the potential for fog. So that would favor coastal communities, some Western Valley cities, talking about Kearney Mesa, Miramar as well. So could see some of that reduced visibility out there as we are looking at a more shallow marine layer. And we're also looking at tomorrow's temperatures. They're going to increase a little bit more. That's all in response to an area of high pressure, that weak ridge creating that more shallow marine layer. So not as extensive as we've seen, just filling in all areas west of the mountains. Now that weak ridge of high pressure brings a little bit of a bump up in our temperatures. It weakens over the weekend, but then we gear up for a stronger ridge by next week. That is going to bring a late October warm up that will have us in the 80s and 90s across the county on Tuesday and Wednesday. And those 80s also include the coast. So widespread when it does come to that warm up. When we look at our overnight lows, we're still seeing some pretty consistent temperatures out there. First thing tomorrow morning, you got 55 degrees. That's going to be for Escondido, the same for Poway, 57 degrees for Chula Vista and for La Mesa. So widespread 50s in the forecast, a few outliers out there, 48 degrees. That's going to be for Campo and for Mount Laguna, 66 degrees for Borrego Springs. When you look at our highs for tomorrow, we're still locked into those widespread 70s closer towards the coast. Areas that were in the upper 60s as well. We had that for Carlsbad and Encinitas today, turn into the low 70s. So that's a little below seasonal for this time of the year, but then you talk about being above seasonal for this time of the year. Average high for the inland valley, 79 degrees, while you're looking at those widespread 80s in the forecast. East of the 15, you have 85 degrees for Ramona, the same for Valley Center, 83 degrees for El Cajon, 70s right there across the mountains. Your surf forecast, about 2 to 4 feet for tomorrow and a moderate risk of rip currents at our local beaches. So the low is exiting towards the east. That it has allowed a modification when it comes to the air mass. So it modifies a little bit more by tomorrow. You start to see more of those orange shades instead of the more yellow, which is kind of those 70s, a little bit more mellow and mild with our temperatures, and more of a bump up in temperatures by tomorrow by a few degrees. Then we get into the weekend forecast where we start to see that area of high pressure drifting a little bit more towards the south of us. And that's because it flattens out as we go into our forecast, and that will be over the weekend, all because of an area of low pressure. It's going to be moving by towards the north of us. It's going to stay well towards the north, but it will trigger some westerly winds and allow our temperatures to slip a little bit over the weekend. That puts us back into what's seasonal for this time of the year. But notice how that air mass is starting to change, and that's by about Sunday night. And that's because we have an even stronger area of high pressure that builds in our forecast, and that's what's going to bring the heat by next week. You have 73 degrees, so that's the range, about low 70s for the coast that goes all the way through Monday. Then you have the upper 70s to low 80s back in the forecast by Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. For the coast, Wednesday looks to be the warmest day. You have a little bit of a slip in temperatures once we go into the second half of the work week for next week. So you have the 80s for inland valleys tomorrow, so low to mid 80s for most of our daytime highs. Then we go back into those 70s. You have 79 degrees on Saturday for the inland valleys. That is a seasonal high for this time of the year, staying in that range for the weekend, but then warming right back up to low 90s by next week. That is going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, back to the 80s by Thursday. 77 degrees for the mountains tomorrow, so staying in that range of mid to upper 70s. Then you have low 70s over the weekend. You get back to those 70s, around 77 on Monday, back to the 80s by Monday and Tuesday of next week. And for the desert, not that much of a difference in temperatures. So the desert kind of removed from this because the desert's going to be in the 90s by next week, but it's only going to be a slight increase in those temperatures. You have 93 degrees for the desert tomorrow. You're still holding on to 90s overall as we go through the next 7 days. You have a little bit of a break on Sunday at 89. I hope you have a great night, and thanks for tuning in.